Hey guys, welcome to another Therapy Thursday. I am so excited to have this amazing conversation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sierra Hillsman. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia, and I am going live with Miss Dylesia Hampton Barner. We're going to talk about mother trauma, or exploring what it looks like to have that mother-daughter relationship that can be toxic. And yes, please make sure that you are dropping your questions. Please make sure that you are having like dope conversations in the chat, because we are going to also be doing a giveaway as well.
Hey.
Hey sis, how are you?
Girl, Instagram was acting crazy, and I was like, listen, this call, like this whole thing has been rescheduled way too many times. We are having it today, period.
We're going to have this today. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, okay? Awesome. Well, please let the people know who you are, because I was gassing you up earlier. All right. So it's one thing for me to say it, but it's another thing for you to say it, for it to come out of your mouth. So, Dylesia, can you please let the people know who you are and more about radical change therapy?
Yes, so I am Dylesia Hampton Barner. I'm a licensed therapist, a licensed clinical social worker to be exact. And I own a private practice called Radical Change Therapy. And we're actually the first practice in the world that specializes in helping women overcome interpersonal trauma, specifically relationships that are painful with their moms. So that can manifest in a lot of different ways. People come in having moms that are narcissistic, codependent. Maybe they don't even know what's wrong, but they know that something's wrong. So really helping them figure out what that is and thrive after that. So in addition to owning my private practice, we also have a series of programs that are available for women who aren't in our therapy services. So we have a digital community called the Curse Breakers Club. And then we also have an event that's coming up in March that I know we're going to talk more about here. So yeah, I'm all about breaking generational curses. And I think so many of us feel like we can just set the intention to break it and not do the work. And then you end up, creating the cycle all over again. And you're just stuck in the middle of a storyline that you no longer want to be in. So I love to help women escape from that storyline.
I appreciate that approach because, one, I'm just realizing that this is our first time even having a live together as long as we've like known each other. So I think that's pretty dope. But the idea of changing the narrative, right? Oftentimes we feel as though what we were born into, what we've been told about ourselves, the concepts and constructs that a lot of people try to place on us, that is our identity. And so the approach that you take in terms of being super intentional is one thing to be aware about a thing, but it's another thing to be intentional about taking action. And I think that's the one thing that I always try to help clients with, is understanding that like we don't do the work. We just help, peel back the layers and shine a light on some of those different patterns and whatnot. And so can you talk a little bit about your process on helping clients identify those toxic patterns, especially within the mother-daughter relationship?
Yeah, so our assessment process in itself is extremely comprehensive. Like when we're meeting with an individual client, for instance, we have a 2-hour assessment. And within that assessment, we're really looking at what I call the 6 dimensions of thriving. And they're bank, besties, booze, babies, bodies, and beliefs. And what that stands for is your career and finances, your romantic relationships, your friendships, your parenting, whether that be like ideologies that you have around parenting or actually the practice of it in the event that you have children. And then also your belief system, so spirituality and religion. And then additionally, your health and wellness. And what I've discovered, and this is really with any client who comes in, we know that they're impacted in those areas, but specifically with women who have traumatic relationships with their moms, those are the 6 areas that it shows up in. And a lot of people, and I'm spiritual, so it's hard for it not to come out. But, a lot of times we feel like we're harvesting in one area. So, we good. Like everything's fine. I'm reaping. Things are great. And you don't really recognize that there are other areas in your life that you need to be sowing into. So you have the house, you have the car, you have, maybe a couple friends, but like your love life is suffering. or you are idle and you come home every day and just sit on your couch and watch TV and eat, those types of things. So really helping women take ownership over the various areas in their life and get to the root of why, they are operating in a way that they don't want to be operating in. So that assessment process again provides us historical information to really help make some of those connections. And then we move into a lot of mindset, which is, what are the messages that you learned about yourself, other people, the world, God, from your mom. And the stories, even though I have my own mom trauma, it's like every time I hear somebody else have it, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe your mama said that to you. So it's still, it pulls up my heartstrings, but we do develop so much identity, not just from our parents, but from our mom in particular, like especially our women. We look to her to tell us who we are and what we're capable of. And when she didn't do that in a, very good way, it carries us on for the rest of our lives until we take on the role of reparenting ourselves. And, as a therapist, a lot of times we throw out terms like do the work and, you need to do the work. But so many clients are like, I would love to do it, but I don't know what to do. And that's where we're partnering with people to show them, what this work actually entails and providing them with the tools to be able to do it on their own when they're not in session.
Absolutely love it, because even as you were talking, there were like three different approaches that popped up. So obviously, like at Lyrian, seeing the way that you see yourself in like social settings and how you show up in relation to other people, cognitive behavioral therapy, like changing that whole mindset, and then like going back to the narrative therapy, like rearranging or just like changing the way that your story shows up in other people. Another thing that really stood out to me as well is just the fact that you were so intentional of looking at the client from a holistic perspective. And now that's trending, obviously, because we see that our mental health is not just an isolated thing. It's so important for us to be able to see how that's impacting our career, how that's impacting our relationships with our spouses or significant others. It's impacting the way that we self-actualize. And so I really do appreciate how intentional you guys were with developing that assessment process, because oftentimes when clients are in that assessment mode, they're like, I never really thought about this. And even with you talking about the thriving aspect, we've been working so hard to survive that we will trick ourselves into believing that we're actually thriving when we really aren't.
Absolutely. And I have this thing where it's like, why do you want to just break one of the curses and not all of them? So I think sometimes it's like we hang on to that one thing that our parent maybe didn't do well, and then we don't think about any of the rest of it. And I know for my mom, like her mom abandoned her when she was 13, left her with 6 kids to take care of, and didn't give them any food. So my mom, like, she always cooked full course meals for us, but everything else was missing. So it's like you took this one thing because you happened to be hungry and decided you were never going to allow your kids to be hungry. But what about their emotional needs and, all these other things? So you're absolutely right that assessment does allow us to see ourselves in a different light and, allow us to kind of make those connections and look at the ways in which we might not be fully living up to the potential that we have.
Yes. Even with that, like life roles, right? So if you have put in this position of being the caregiver, that's all you're going to operate in. Or if you find yourself being like the provider role, that's how I'm going to constantly show love in that way. Even I was just thinking about like stages of development, how like the first stage of Erickson's stages of development is trust versus mistrust. And so we learn how to trust the rest of the world based upon how we are taught from our parents or maybe even our caregivers. And so that's where you get like all these different attachment styles and whatnot. How do you help clients connect the dots in that area once they've done the assessment, once they're able to see like, wow, these are some pain points that I need to address? How do you get them over the hump and build the courage to address those pain points?
So usually at that point, and I brief clients on this up front, like what the emotional journey is probably going to look like for them, because they're going to be angry, as they're finding out all of this information and realizing, yo, this is not who I am. There's not anything wrong with me. I'm really shaped by what my upbringing was. They want to fight at that point. So You know, it's really a lot of like helping them recognize that their parent did whatever they did because of what happened to them too. So even if we aren't equipped with the information of knowing exactly what happened to mom, we can still be hypothetical and make guesses. Like if she did this, this is probably a scenario of things that could have happened to her to cause her to show up this way. So, you know, there's a lot of psychoeducation around that. But then when it comes to getting over the hump of the anger, after the anger is subsided, which is going to take a while, you know, it depends on the client, but for the most part, I would say it's going to take several months for you to come to the point where you're not angry at your caregiver anymore. But after that, what we do at that point is really determining like, where do you want this relationship to go? Because at some, you know, sometimes we know too much and we're like, I don't even want this anymore. Like, I'm too aware at this point. So it's really like, do you want estrangement? Do you want to try to work it out and see how she carries it? And, you know, if she doesn't respond appropriately, then we might go down the estrangement avenue. It's really assessing like what they want to do next. And I've had a variety of situations. You know, I've had people say, well, I'm just done because I know that a conversation is not necessarily going to be beneficial. Then I've had other clients who do want to broach the topic with their parent and actually do receive positive feedback from it. You know, it's really funny because I did not get good feedback from my mom when I tried to confront her, but every client that I've worked with who's actually wanted to do that has gotten good feedback. So I'm
Oh,
like, okay,
amen.
well, maybe I just needed a me. But yeah, after we decide what direction they want to go in, then there's a lot of role playing, and you know, even letter writing is an appropriate tool. Now, don't give the first version of the letter, but that's gonna be something we keep in therapy to talk about. But yeah, a lot of just preparing them for that conversation and really preparing them for whatever outcome might happen. Because again, we can't control the other person, but that doesn't mean that you should be exempt from using your voice and setting your boundaries and speaking your truth. So, you know, really just getting them to the point where they are willing to choose themselves regardless of what their mom might do, you know, when she is confronted.
I absolutely love the preparation piece because, like, we always try to get clients to this specific goal. But what I tell them when it comes to like change and life transitions, it's one thing to, hey, Nicole, it's one thing to say, I want to change, but how do we prepare for the process of entering into change and to also prepare for the emotions on the other side of that thing? And even when we were talking about anger, I immediately thought about like the grief cycle, like what
Yeah.
emotions underneath that anger comes, because I'm like, that entire journey sounds like at some point we're going to be grieving due to the new information that we've gained about ourselves, grieving due to the new information that we've gained about our mother, maybe even grieving the fact that like I've lived this way for so long because I didn't want to address these traumas, this hurt, this pain, or maybe even grieving the loss of like what we view our parents to be. Because sometimes to protect ourselves, we'll try to like reshape the way our mom looks in order for us to have like a cordial relationship.
Yep.
And so,
You are just hitting all of it. I love it. And then another thing is that, you know, my clients who really have a hard time are usually ones who are perfectionists. Because, you know, in the perfectionist world, everything has to go, you know, the way that it's supposed to go. And usually, if you are a perfectionist, it's rooted in trauma anyway. So we know that that's a manifestation. But that's usually the hardest client because they don't want to accept it.
mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, how can I, like, what am I going to become if I take away the fact that this is not the truth? So a lot of people are just really afraid of the dismantling of self that happens when you dismantle a narrative that isn't a reality.
Come on, dismantling, okay?
Yeah. I mean, that's what therapy is, though. And generational curse breaking is that you have to dismantle. And it is uncomfortable. Like, it's not a cute process. I wish I could take the pain away from every client, but I'm like, you got to go through this because I had to go through it, and everybody's going to have to go through it.
Right. And then even then, right, like reminding them that it's a bit icky, but encouraging them to like root themselves, ground themselves with resiliency tools. That's where spirituality comes in. Those other mothers, like your godmother or aunts or other positive female role models, finding those things to help remind you that, yeah, this sucks, but it is going to be okay.
And that, you bring up a good point because a lot of us feel like we're stuck with the family of origin that we have, and you can build a chosen family. Like, and
Hmm.
it's funny, me and my husband were reflecting on this yesterday. I was like, you have a family, and if you look at me, I don't really have a lot of family members, but I have a bigger support system than you do. And he was like, yeah, you're right, because I'm always talking to my friends and, the loved ones that I've gotten over time. And we really do have closer relationships with the chosen family I've built than we even do with his family, and he's close to them. So it's, there's just, like I said, again, that ownership is so important to me because this is the only life that you get to live. And you should not live what you were handed. You have every opportunity to change that.
And I think that's so important to point out because I think oftentimes clients come to therapy thinking as though life is happening to them. But I am really big on like choice theory. We're making choices every second, every minute, every hour, every day. And so, yes, the card that you were dealt is uncomfortable, but you can utilize the power of choice to identify individuals who you can choose to call family. Even when we're looking at like the relationship onion, how it's like strangers, associates, acquaintances, like friends and family, but that family piece you get to choose based upon the relationship that you have with yourself.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's the concentric circle exercise where you figure out who's close to you. And then also you mentioned resiliency too. And that's one of the questionnaires that we do with our clients when they initially come in. And that's because we know that, we're going to be delivering some hard truths to you. And we need to be able to connect it back to the fact that, yes, this is happening. This might be the diagnosis, but you are resilient for these various ways that you pointed out when you did this questionnaire. So it's hard work, but it's very necessary work, and I love doing it.
Yes, it is hard work, but it's very necessary work. One, I really appreciate this conversation because I've literally been seeing like this uptrend of a lot of women, especially women of color, coming out talking about their traumatic experiences with their mother. I think historically, a lot of people used to look at women as having like daddy issues. But on the flip side, the mom can just be as like mentally, emotionally, physically abusive as such. And so I was just like, oh, this is my time to have some little consultation.
That's And then, it's a lot of times when women have daddy issues, they have mom issues too. And mom
Mhm.
somehow exacerbated the dad issues. So it's very interesting the link between that. And, that's all historical, like rooted in slavery and things like that, where we just traditionally like outcast men and, all of that. So I agree with you that there has for a long time been the focus on how a man can impact his daughter. And a lot of, relationally that happens. But when we really look at like who has the biggest impact, it is always going to be the mom. I mean, you came out of your mother. So there's just a different type of connection. And there's scientific research that shows that a daughter is more connected to her mom than any parent-child relationship that could exist. So,
Yes, absolutely love it. I want to even get to that particular thing because when you were talking about that, immediately I thought about identity. And
yeah.
I remember I was having a conversation with my mom when like Brown Skin Girl, the song came out. And I was just like, me and my mom, we have a really close relationship. And I was just like, you taught me everything except for how to be a woman. Like how to like date or have like these relationships or how to like build friendships. You taught me how to be self-sufficient and to be smart, but you didn't teach me how to be a woman. And so I think a lot of individuals can even consider like, oh, how do the teachings or the non-teachings of my mother impact my identity? Can you talk about the identity work that you do with women as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you and your mom have the capacity to talk about those things, and you can share with her that, maybe you didn't do so good in this area. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It was just the oversight, and you probably weren't parented in that way either, so you didn't know to do it. So when it comes to the identity work, it does go a lot back to that messaging, which I told you about before, because our narratives that we create about everything around us are shaping what our identity is. But when you specifically talk about that, what came to mind for me was, some of the deficit areas that we have, especially when it comes to femininity and like exploring emotions and being vulnerable and all of those different things. A lot of women, especially Black women, feel like their identity is rooted in being strong. And strong means how much BS can I take, or how much pain can I endure? So really dismantling a lot of those historic narratives that we've been given is a big part of the identity work too. So it's, hand in hand working with like, what did your parents teach you? But then also what has life taught you about being a Black woman? And how can you really revolutionize that? Because we're not a monolith. And you have the full disclosure to decide who you want to be as a woman. Like, what does it look like for you?
Absolutely love it. And then even then, that's when people learn how to release. And speaking of which, let's jump into your event. Please let the people know more about it, how they can partner with you or even attend.
Yeah, so the release is what it has been previously called. We're going through some name changes right now, but it is still called the release. If you watch this later this month, it probably will not be called that anymore. I won't reveal the current name, but if you want additional information, the handle is still the same. It's thereleasehq.com. But when it comes to that event, it's actually a 3-day healing event that's hosted here in Nashville, Tennessee. Undisclosed location, but very beautiful, like frequented by celebrities. So it's a very nice space. And what we're going to be doing is really diving deep into those 6 dimensions of thriving that I told you about, and really working with each of the women who show up to discover in what ways has your relationship with your mom impacted you in all of these areas. So everybody's going to leave with pretty much a blueprint where if you want to go to your therapist and take it to her, if you want to work with us, whatever you want to do with this information, you are equipped to do it. Because I think, like I said, a lot of times people just don't know all the ways in which they're impacted. So I really, again, want people to leave with like full knowledge of themselves. And what I often tell my clients is that you have to know the traumatized version of you like the back of your hand. Like, she has to be your best friend. You need to know when she's going to show up, what she's going to say, who she's going to say it to, how she's going to react. And that's what this event is going to help you do, is really get acquainted with that traumatized version of yourself so that you can, kind of second, guess her before she even moves in the ways that she's gonna move. So I'm really excited about it. And like you said, it still is gonna be a release regardless of what the new name is gonna be, because this is such a sacred subject and a lot of us have not had the time to be able to let go and really face our truths. And that's, there's community elements that are going to be included, activities. There's just so much chance to be able to bond and build relationships with people who will not make you over explain your trauma or, convince you that you really haven't been traumatized. Just really a safe space to let go, like you said.
Definitely. So please make sure that you guys are tapping into that. We're going to give additional details on how you can win a free ticket to the release. I will be dropping that information in the chat underneath this video. So for those of you who are rewatching the replay, you'll have all that information just like listed out. I'll also be sending it out on my email blast, and this will also be heard on YouTube as well as the Legacy Speaks podcast. So we are cross-pollinating out here in these streets, so there is no excuse for you not to know what's going on, okay? Dylesia, thank you so much for your time, wisdom, and experience. So like I mentioned, your niche, the work that you do is so needed, and I just greatly appreciate the person that you are and all that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you creating this platform and being consistent, because I know it's hard to show up on social media regularly. Like, it's difficult. So I see you. I be logging on Instagram and I feel like in my head, since I work, at home primarily, you're my coworker. It's like, oh, she at work today. Okay, hey Sierra girl. Like, I really have people in my head that are my coworkers. For this.
Oh, that's a blessing. Thank you for that. Love it. Love it. Can you please let the people know where they can find you as well as your website?
Yes, so obviously my handle is in here, Dylesia Hampton Barner. I'm also on Twitter, Dylesia H Barner is my Twitter. And then the website for the practice is radicalchangetherapy.org. We also have a Instagram page too, which has the practice website listed. If you want therapy services, your first stop is to start at the website and submit a consultation form, and our admin assistant will reach out.
Okay, and you guys, she's located in Nashville and licensed in the state of Tennessee. Are there any other state licensures?
Yeah, so I'm actually personally licensed in Tennessee and Virginia, and the therapists who work for my agency are Tennessee, Virginia, and Illinois.
Awesome. I always like to let people know that way if for anybody else who is in a different state, they have that option. So good.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of Legacy Speaks Therapy Thursdays. Please make sure that you are liking, commenting, and subscribing to everything. And don't forget to share this if this resonated with you. And we will see you next time.
See you later. Bye.